Welcome to the Writer's Journey podcast. I'm Michael Laron, a science fiction and fantasy author on a journey to go from nobody to bestseller, and I'm documenting every step of the way. Tune in every week as I pull back the curtain on my writing life and how I'm building a writing career while working a full-time job, raising a family, and attending law school classes in the evenings. You can find show notes for this week's episode, a free starter library of my fiction, and much more at michaellaron.com. Hello and welcome to episode 111. 111 is a good number, and it is the only episode until 1111 that has all ones in it. It's kind of a fun fact. The things that you learn and pick up as you produce more episodes. So hope everybody is healthy and well, first and foremost. Hope everyone is taking care of your family. Hope everyone is doing their best to stay occupied and stay sane during quarantine and isolation, especially as it gets nicer outside. I know that we've been trying to get to parks and trails and things as safely as we can, just because it is much nicer outside, and it just got to get out and get some fresh air. So this week, what I wanted to talk about is some things that I've been doing to kind of keep myself busy, keep myself occupied, and some things that I think are going to be pretty interesting and hopefully bear some fruit for me here later this year. So, for announcements, I have a new segment of the show that I'm going to start implementing. I may or may not do this long term. We'll see how it goes. We'll see how many of these that I have. But I'm going to start a new segment called Idea of the Week. And I'm going to give away ideas that other people can steal, hopefully for the benefit of the writing community. So one of my things that I do on a regular basis is I come up with a bunch of ideas, and a lot of them I just kind of can't do anything with. And so I was like, well, I read a book years ago. It was called Be an Idea Machine, I think it was, or How to Be an Idea Machine by James Altucher, and I think his wife at the time. And the goal of that book, or the main premise or takeaway of that book, was to come up with 10 ideas every single day. And if you can do that, just imagine how many ideas you would have throughout the period of a year. And imagine if just one of those ideas bore some kind of fruit, how meaningful that would be for your life. And so while I haven't quite done, an idea every day or 10 ideas every day, I do have ideas regularly, and I do write them down regularly. And I do have this really, really big repository of ideas that I probably will never get to. Why? Well, one, because my time is best spent writing. Two, my time is best spent with my family. Three, my time is best spent focusing on my writing business, and I just don't want to have scope creep. So I don't want to be a writer and end up doing all these sorts of other things. And so I thought, you know what, why not just advertise some of these ideas? You never know who's listening. And if any of you happen to implement any of these ideas, let me know. I will be a customer. And one of the things I've learned about this show and my YouTube channel is that you never know who's listening. To me, everyone out there, and how diverse this audience is. And so you might hear something that maybe you have a skill set to do and you can run with it. So anyway, I will stop belaboring that, but I'll get to that here in a moment. The idea of the week. My wins for the week is that I knocked out 4 courses by Dean Wesley Smith, and I took an entire notebook full of notes. It's going to be truly a game changer. So I talked last week about how I focused on I picked up the lifetime subscription to the WMG workshops with Dean Wesley Smith and Christine Catherine Rush. So I've been taking the time to go through those, and I said, you know what? I'm going to treat this like a virtual apprenticeship with both of them. I'm going to learn everything I can. I'm going to take copious notes. I'm going to think deeply about all of the assignments. I'm going to do all the assignments that they give, and I'm going to use this as the opportunity that it truly is. And so I've been taking these courses, took 4 of them so far. And by the way, if you hear a little bit of gnawing and jingling, that's my puppy. She's on her bed next to my desk. And I'm on puppy father duty, I guess you would call it. And I have to give her a bone to keep her occupied. So apologies in advance for that. But anyway, I am taking advantage of that, and I've learned a lot. I took the refresh courses from them, just basically how to refresh your career, how to refresh your books, how to think long term, and I learned some really, really valuable things. One of those is something something that came out of one of those courses is something I'm going to talk about today. Another item, another win for the week for me was that I also snagged 2 new apps at a 50% discount due to the coronavirus pandemic. So I've decided to stop using Photoshop. I am not, the yearly subscription doesn't bother me as much as the fact that I just don't like Photoshop. Like, Adobe Premiere is cool. I used to use that. I use that for another month to edit my YouTube videos, and I've never had a problem with Adobe Premiere, and Premiere does the job just fine, and there's a lot of really good things about it. But I have this loathing of Photoshop, and I don't know if anybody else feels this way, but Photoshop is the way Photoshop is built, and maybe this is true of all graphic design apps. It's just not how I think. I just don't know what to do with half of the buttons that are on the screen, and with the other half of the buttons that I do know what to do with, I can't ever seem to get them right. And so I said, you know what? Okay, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm going to try to do something different. With expenses the way they are, I don't have to cut it. I don't have to cut the yearly subscription, but it just kind of makes sense to do it. So can I find something better to help me edit my YouTube videos and to also do better thumbnails and any kind of Photoshop tasks that I need? And so I picked up Affinity Publisher and Affinity Photo. So Affinity Publisher is kind of like InDesign, and then Affinity Photo is basically like Photoshop. It's $50. I got it for $25, and it has some drawbacks and limitations, but it's not like GIMP. GIMP is like the open source stuff. It's much better, and it's pretty intuitive and easy to use. And so my use for Photoshop is still pretty minimal at this point. I'm not using it for anything fancy, so I said, you know what, let me just try this and see how it goes. So I picked up both of those, and then I also picked up Parallels, for any of you who know what that is. I got that at a discount as well. There's a lot of companies doing discounts and sales. It's kind of a cool thing if you've got some disposable income to spend. And so I picked up Parallels, which allows me to run Windows on my Mac, which I've been wanting to do that for a really long time. I said next time it goes on sale, I'm going to grab it, and it did, and it's awesome. Like it's a huge game changer. I can have Windows open on my computer at the same time as Mac, and I can use Windows applications now, which means that one of these days I will get around to doing a Scrivener for Windows tutorial video. That's one of my most popular videos on YouTube, my Scrivener for Learn Scrivener in 20 minutes, and every other comment is like, well, why don't you do the Windows version? Why don't you do the Windows version? So I'm going to get around to it. Sometime this year, I will commit to doing that video. 20 minutes learning Scrivener fast. But anyway, I just thought it was kind of funny. But yeah, it's a huge cool thing to be able to use the Microsoft Office apps in their native environment, which is something I'm going to talk about here in a moment. Now, my lesson learned this week is a little self-awareness thing, and I wonder if other people have realized this about themselves as well. But this past week, I've been reflecting on how I learn, and I've realized, and I've known this for a long time, I've just never really verbalized it, is that I go through periods of expanding and contracting with my learning. And right now, I'm currently in a learning expansion. So I happened to find that lifetime subscription by Dean Wesley Smith, and I've been soaking up the material. In fact, I have been so hungry for knowledge of any kind that I have this really, really weird superpower that I can absorb a ridiculous amount of information in a very, very small period of time. Like I can go through entire books and retain them. I can take courses and I can elevate my skill level to like crazy levels really, really quickly. And then after that begins to fade, I tend to drop off, right? And so then I start to contract, and I don't focus so much on the learning. But then I have these periods where when I'm in a contraction, I can really focus on production. So like I can produce like crazy, and then that drops off, and then I want to learn more. And these cycles, they run about 6 to 8 weeks, And I don't know if, like I said, it's not scientific or anything like that. But like right now, I'm in this expansion period, and I have so many ideas that like I can't write them down fast enough. I see so many different opportunities that I have to write them down and hope that I can get to them later. And so it's a really great thing. I try to take advantage of times like this by writing everything down so that I can rely on it when I do enter that period of contraction. Because like if I come up with tons of ideas for novels or for things that I can write in my nonfiction, and I'm producing and maybe I don't have as much inspiration, well, then I have a notebook that I can go back to and I can look at all that information. So that's my tip of the week. If you have ever thought about writing ideas down, or maybe if you don't do it on a regular basis, commit to just trying to write down one idea every day. It could be an idea about a short story, an idea about a novel, from a movie that you saw. Maybe you're reading a book and you're like, I would love to write a book that's kind of like this, but maybe a little bit different, right? That's all perfect fodder to write down, to remember, because we forget so much of what we go through on a daily basis. And the only way that I've been able to stay productive and inspired, I think, over all these years is the fact that I write everything down. So, all right, let's move on to our new segment of the week, Idea of the Week. All right, so like I said, I may or may not include this consistently. I'll include it when I have it, certainly. And this week's idea for you to steal is for those of you out there who have programming chops, particularly web programming chops. Now, I hope that this would not be a very difficult thing to do. I don't think that it would be, knowing what I know about the limited amount of information I know about web programming. So the idea is a browser plugin that gives you easy access to all of your book marketing materials. So let me give you an example. Let's say that if you're on Bargain Booksy or BookBub or you name whatever the book promotion sites are out there. I mean, they change like every 3 months. Robin Reads, Awesome Gang, right? You're on one of those sites, and you have to fill in these tedious forms every single time. So if you want to do a book promotion to launch your book, you're going to go to Robin Reads, you're going to go to Bargain Booksy, you're going to go to BookBub, you're going to go to Awesome Gang. Maybe there's some service out there that will allow you to submit your book to multiple different promo sites at the same time, but they're certainly not going to let you send them to all of them. I know that there's some software out there that may help you with this, so on and so forth. Anyway, but let's just say that you don't have that luxury, right? You've got to fill all this information in by hand every single time. And you're going to fill in the same information every single time. Your book, your title, your subtitle. You're going to have to either link to a cover either on Amazon, or you're going to have to upload a cover. You're going to have to upload enter in a book description. You've got to enter in 9 times out of 10 the ASIN. You've got to put the links to Amazon, to Google, to Barnes & Noble. You've got to put in sometimes if you've got a print edition, sometimes if it's an audiobook, you got to put in the number of hours. All of this stuff is metadata, right? And you've got to put all that crap in there every single time. It's one of the reasons I stopped doing these promotions, because it's just too much of a laborious task. So what if there was a browser plugin that you could install as like an applet, kind of like Book Report, where basically it sits on top of your browser, or it sits on your browser like a little button, and you click the button and then you can select whatever book it is that you have. Now you would have to load all your information into this app ahead of time. Okay, so let's remember that. But let's say you've loaded all your books information in. You go to this promo site form that you have to fill out. You click the little button that says, this is the app, and then you select your book, and then it auto-populates the field with all of the information that it can. Kind of like, you do with passwords and things like that, but it's specific for a book that you're trying to promote. So I think that this could be a really, really cool idea. There'd be some challenges to it, but if the typical stuff like ASIN, title, book title, price, all that stuff could easily be stored and auto-populated, I think, in my opinion. Now, I don't think this can be too difficult for a smart programmer. And if you're interested in developing that and you'd like me to offer some advice or feedback or additional ideas, like I said, I'd be happy to be a customer. Contact me at authorlevelup.com/contact. All right, so let's get to our topic of the week here. I've been taking this time to organize and be organized and quietly invest in my writing infrastructure. So while I haven't been as productive from a word perspective, I have produced a course. I am producing some things behind the scenes. I'm still as productive as ever, even though I'm not producing as many books this year. There are a couple reasons for that. The first reason is that during a time like this, I find it's a really great time to sit back and learn and absorb information. And I'm still getting some writing done, right? But I'm going to come out of this, and I want to use this time as efficiently and as wisely as I can. And all this time at home is a great opportunity to learn some new things. Be productive at a certain level. And so what I've been trying to do is, how do I get my writing infrastructure in a better spot? So I did a course called Writing in Hard Times, authorlevelup.com/hard times, that basically talks about how to prepare for many different scenarios that life can throw your way as a writer. And I think all of us with this coronavirus pandemic, we're looking at things a little bit differently in terms of our personal lives and our business lives. I've belabored that point many times, so I'm not going to go into that anymore today, this week. But one of the things that I've been looking at is, how can I be more prepared for the next time around? And it's not so much disaster, but how can I be a little bit more organized, right? And so there's been a lot of different things that I've tried over the years that I haven't quite been able to find solutions to. And I'm still trying to figure it out. One of those is a big one, and that is, how do you aggregate all of your book sales information efficiently, quickly, accurately, and in as little time as possible? So I don't know about the rest of you, but going through KDP reports and Barnes & Noble reports and Google reports and Apple reports, it's just a pain in the ass, you know. There's some months where I don't even want to do it, you know, and I'm so behind on my royalties. I have to rely on Book Report, and that's really just for Amazon. Like I really don't have an accurate picture of what I'm selling on all of the retailers, and that's because it's just such a pain that it's just not worth it, you know. And so I'm still trying to figure out an efficient way to do that. I may have stumbled upon what that is. So one of the things, I took this Dean Wesley Smith course. It's called Refresh. I think I linked to it last week. I highly recommend it. It's a fantastic course. And quite frankly, I'm not going to go into what he taught, because I think if you want to learn the information, spend the money, you're not going to have wasted your money. Trust me on that. But one of the things that he was talking about was how to manage your intellectual property. And one of the things that I've said for a while on my mailing list, if you're on my mailing list in my fan club, it's one of my most popular emails. It's about week 5 or 6 into the sequence, and it's about managing your intellectual property and thinking about it as assets. So instead of thinking about a book as a book, it's an asset. And if you think about all of your books together, your books are a portfolio of assets. And it's kind of like when you have a stock portfolio. You know, you don't make all of your money off of one stock. You make all of your money from a collection of your stocks, right? So a stockbroker is not going to invest all of their money in just one stock or one company, right? They're going to invest it in many different stocks. Sorry, my puppy's up on my lap. They're going to invest it in many different stocks, and so it pays for you to think about the performance of your book not as just one book, but also as a whole. So how do you manage your entire portfolio? But then how do you also manage your books in a way that helps you position yourself for future opportunities? Like, for example, every 3 or 4 years, I update my covers and I update my book descriptions and all that stuff. But how do I keep track of all that? You know, and I have this really archaic system that I use to kind of keep track of my book descriptions and things like that, but it doesn't really work that well. And so I was listening to what Dean was saying in this course, and I thought, you know, the best way to handle some of this stuff is not in an Excel spreadsheet. And Excel spreadsheets for me are kind of like it's kind of like Photoshop. It's just not how I think. You know, I definitely want to be more data driven, but I'm not an Excel guy. It's just not. It's not my thing. I don't know why. It's not built for the way that I intuitively think. Right. And so I was doing some digging. I'm like, okay, there has to be a way to solve this problem. There's got to be a way to crack this nut. And when I have these little ideas, like I think about them and I think about them and I think about them and I can't stop thinking about it. Like it literally is to the point where I can't sleep. I think about ideas so much. And I happened to watch a video on YouTube on Microsoft Access. And interestingly enough, I would have never given Access 2 minutes of a day, up until this past weekend. I just didn't, it's out of all the Microsoft Office tools, it is the least sexy. If you say, oh, I want to take a Microsoft Access course, people are going to look at you like you've got 10 heads. Access is not sexy. It's not. And I've always found it to be very intimidating. So I've had several jobs in the past where I've had to run into Access a little bit, and I've always come away kind of shaking in my boots a little bit because it just seems very, very complicated. But I was watching a YouTube video of a guy that was talking about how to use Access to solve certain data problems. And as he was talking, some light bulbs started going off in my head. And I thought, this is really interesting. What if I could build for myself, right? What if I could build a database that housed all of my books and their data points so that I could keep track of all of the information in the books, right? So like when was the cover designed last? Who was the editor? How much did I pay for the editing? That sort of thing. Did this book have beta readers? When was the last time the ebook edition was updated, and when did I update it? Did I copyright this book in case a film agent comes knocking, or an agent or somebody comes knocking wanting to know about the copyright? Well, I got to go rush off and register that book's copyright if I haven't registered it yet. What about ISBNs? I mean, there's all sorts of data points that your book consists of, right? I've been saying this again and again. And I thought, okay, that's interesting. There's no way one Excel spreadsheet can store all this. And in all reality, in all actuality, there's no way that you could even store a lot of this information in multiple spreadsheets that could talk to each other. But as I was watching this guy talk about Access, I thought, this is a relational database. And I had never known what that was before. I really had never really known what a database was before, other than it's something that you go to and you type in at the library and it tells you what books they have. I mean, that I understand that from a database perspective. And so I thought, what if I could use Microsoft Access to build this kind of database? And then what if I could ask questions to this database? More specifically, what if I could ask this database any kind of question about the performance and health of my writing business? And what if, at the snap of a finger, it could return an accurate result? And so I started watching more and more Microsoft Access videos, and then I fell into this rabbit hole where I didn't really eat, I didn't really sleep, and I learned how to use Microsoft Access, and I learned how to build databases in about 2 or 3 days, which I'm kind of surprised that I was even able to do this. But I built a working, functional copyright database for my work. And let me explain how this works. So every book, I said, consists of many different data points. And all of those data points are something that you're going to need at some point in your career, right? So you're going to need your book's ASINs for many different things. You're going to need to know what the unique identifiers are on Google and Smashwords and Google Play and links to those places. Because how many times does somebody ask you, or you have to fill out a form that's got the links to all your book on all the different retailers? It's kind of a pain to have to go off to all those retailers, isn't it? You're going to need to know what the most current book description of your book is. You're going to need to know when you updated your book last, what version of your book is out there for sale in case you accidentally update the wrong version. I've done that. I think we've all done that. There's so many things, right? And so that is actually what Access was created for. It was created to solve these data problems that Microsoft Excel can't solve. And I think the problem that writers have is that we're all using Excel. We're all trying to use Excel as like this Band-Aid, but that's not the real solution for what we can actually work with. So here's what I built. I built a database where I could enter in all the information for all of my books on many different tables, which they kind of look like spreadsheets, but they're not really spreadsheets. And by the way, I actually did a blog series where you can actually see me build this in real time. authorlevelup.com/copyright database. That'll take you to the first post if you want to look at it and follow along. So all my books are in different tables. And each of those tables store different information about my book. So there's one table that's got all the book titles and the word counts and the publication dates. There's another table that's got the books that are in audio format, another table for the books I've got in translation, another table for the books that I've got in paperback, and then all the different paperback attributes, the ISBN 10s, the ISBN 13s, the number of pages, the interior color, whether it's black and white or color, the page color, all those sorts of things. And then what I have is, now that I have all this information, and that's my puppy kicking around a bowl. So now what I have is all of this information, and what I can do now is run what's called a query in Microsoft Access, and I can ask it virtually anything. So for example, I ran a query yesterday and I asked, how many of my books are in audiobook format, and what was the publication date for all of those books? Oh, and by the way, what was the publication date for those books in paperback and ebook as well? And I ran the query. It took me like two or three minutes to set up because I don't know what I'm doing. But then it returned a spreadsheet of all of the books that I have in audio, the ebook publication date, the paperback publication date, the audiobook publication date, and virtually anything else I wanted, in just a click of a button. And all that information is stored in all these various tables and not just one spreadsheet. So if you look at it, it looks really weird, but when you run the query, it returns the information to you in a very easy to understand and easy to read way. So that got me thinking a little bit more, okay, how can I add books to this database very easily? So I created a front end that basically sits over the top of this, so it looks much nicer and much cleaner, and it's got all the different fields in it, and I can just go through and add books like in a breeze, right? And then once I can add a book to the database, it's there forever. So like, for example, if I want to look at my first book, I can pull it up in this visual, the front end, and then I can look at it and I can say, okay, How to Be Bad was my first book. Who was my cover designer for that? I cannot remember who my cover designer was. And so on that page, it's got all the book information, and then there's a tab for cover design. When I click that tab, and then it shows me, because I built all this in the back end, shows me who the cover designer was, shows me the cover designer's email, shows me the cover designer's website. It shows me how much it cost to design the cover, and even, I've been asking for this lately, will show me the title, the font of the title of the book, of the design, the font of the subtitle, and the author name font in case I ever need those in the future. What if I need to know emails that I had with my cover designer? What if there was maybe my designer said something, I don't remember what she said, but maybe I need to know what it is. Well, I've got a link to the place where I store all my emails and all the files that I have for each of my individual books, and it will take me to that individual books folder because I put it in there, and I can look at the emails that I have with that cover designer, as well as the cover files, the PSDs, all of that at the click of a button. I've transitioned to a versioning system for my ebook and paperback updates. So lately, if you buy one of my books, you'll notice on the copyright page. I haven't done this with all my books yet, but all my new ones I've done it with, about the last 10 or 15 books. I have a version in the copyright page. And so the version corresponds with an internal log that I have. And basically what I do is I have a version 1.0, and then I'll put notes and I'll say, updated the copyright page, fixed a typo in chapter 2, changed my editor's name because I had it misspelled, right? So now what I've done is I've transitioned that versioning log into the database. So then I can just enter in that information really quickly. So then a year from now, I can say, one of my readers just emailed me and told me that one of the links in chapter 5 is broken, but I could have sworn that I updated that last time. Well, I go to the database, I find the book, and then, which takes like 10 seconds, and then I look at the version log, and I say, I did change the links in to this last year. Maybe I did it wrong. So then I can pinpoint when I did something in one of my books that broke one of my books. See how powerful that is? So I can run a report instantly of all the ebook changes that I did for all of my books in an entire year. For example, I can look at all the ebook changes I did in a given year. I can look at all the ebook interior changes I did for a given series. I can look at all the paperback interior changes I did for a certain series. I can now do this with my book descriptions. I hope you can see how powerful this is, right? And so if my vision here was that if I could build a database that houses everything I need to know at the click of a button or with a query, right, then that's going to position me to become the writer of the future. Because I had a project that I work with, and I haven't talked about this very much, and I won't say very much about it either because it didn't really go anywhere. But I was working with a developer last year to create an app, and the selling point of this app would have been that it would have connected to all of the book retailer APIs. So Amazon, Kobo, Barnes & Noble. And what it would have been able to do is return all the metadata of my books and show me how they're performing at these retailers. Now, there were a number of reasons we didn't proceed with it. But one of the things that I learned from these developers is that the world is moving toward more APIs. APIs is one of those things that if you're in the programming world, you know what that is. You eat, breathe, and drink, eat, sleep, and drink, and breathe it. But the average person doesn't really know what an API is, application programming interface. It's basically like a plug and a socket. So Amazon has a socket, and they basically tell you how you can connect to their servers and download information about their products and their books, mainly for their affiliate program, so that you can help sell more of their products. So they say you have to connect this certain way, and if you do that, here are the fields and the data that we will give you, and you can implement that into an app. Kindle or KDP Rocket or Publisher Rocket is a classic example of how a app in a publishing space uses an API. All it does is it uses the Amazon product advertising API. And what it does is you basically type in what you're looking for. Rocket goes and searches the API and returns the values that you're looking for in the form of reports that have to do with keywords, that have to do with sales, all these sorts of things. In the future, more and more programs and applications and devices, dare I say, are going to have APIs that we can tap into and tap into the power of those. That is the future. That is on its way. And that's something that I learned by working with these developers who were very forward-thinking and in many respects maybe ahead of their time. And so how do I position myself for that world? Well, a database is a great way to do that because, let's put it this way. I've written at this point over 50 books, and I have about 100 short stories and poems, and I've got 111 episodes of The Writer's Journey. I've got, at the end of this year, I'll have 261 episodes of my podcast, Writing Tip of the Day, and then I've got so many other things I've created. And all told, right now, I've got about 1,000 pieces of intellectual property. Everything I create is a piece of intellectual property, right? Like I have a lot of it. And if I continue what I'm doing and I continue the path I'm on, which I have no reason not to unless, I get hit by a bus tomorrow, wow, you imagine where I'm going to be in 10 to 20 years? And wow, can you imagine how complicated and difficult that's going to be to keep track of all that stuff? You imagine if a publisher or a Hollywood agent reaches out to me and says, hey, Michael, we'd love to do a mass deal with you. We'd love to get 20 of your books into audio. Can you tell us which rights are available? Uh-oh. How am I going to do that? I'm going to have to go through all of my books and figure out, no, don't do that. Let's just do a query and have the query return everything that I'm looking for so that I can pass that information on to the opportunity. And I can run that in 5 minutes versus taking an entire week off of work to figure out what the heck I've got going on. And so if I can get organized now and focus on getting this right, oh man. Now, here's the thing. I spent an entire week learning databases, and quite frankly, I'm shocked that I was able to build something that actually works. Because I don't have any programming experience. Very minimal. I have no Access experience, but Access it is kind of interesting. It's kind of how I think. Like, I talked about Photoshop and how I don't think that way. Access, it's kind of set up to how I think. It was really, really weird. Like, I found Access is all about categorizing and organizing and filtering information, and that's exactly how my brain works. Like, I have a very encyclopedic mind. I'm always making connections with things and trying to figure out how they fit. And sometimes I make connections with things that don't make any sense, but they make a lot of sense to me, and sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. And, I spent about a week, maybe two to 3 weeks once I'm all done, building this out. And it's kind of a risk, right? Because if I get it wrong, well, then I just wasted 2 or 3 weeks of my time. In the grand scheme of my life, probably not a big deal. I learned a lot. It's got some things I can take away. But if I get this right, it's a bonanza. Like, nobody that I know of is doing this. This is like, I've got this lane all to myself. I feel like I say that a lot. Writing in hard times. I did a book on risk management for writers. I've got that lane all to myself. I'm doing this now. I've got this lane all to myself. But my point is, and I hope that I haven't been too rambly this week, and I hope that you heard something that maybe had some light bulbs go off, makes sense. Be sure to check out my blog post about this. Again, authorlevelup.com/copyright database. It'll take you to part 1 of my series. I don't know how many parts it'll be, but I'm going to keep blogging until I finish it. I have lots of screenshots, and you can see everything I'm talking about in visual action here. So I can prove to you I'm not crazy. But it's going to be a bonanza if I get this right. Like, holy crap, And this could potentially be a really great solution for a lot of writers. Now, I don't quite frankly, I don't know that I'm the person to help people learn this. Maybe at some point I'll improve my skill level to where I could do that. I'm just taking baby steps at this point. But if I could put this together in a period of a week, I'm sure there's some of you out there who could do this as well. And what might that do for your business, right? What might that do for your organization? How cool would it be to finish a book, throw it in a database, and it's stored in your database for all time for whenever you need it, right? Like, all of this stuff is really, really cool. Now, I know it's geeky. I know it's not sexy. It's not Amazon ads. It's not, how to sell more books and all that. But building a writing career that lasts is something that is very important to me, especially during these times. And it's something that I believe, and it's just my humble, honest opinion, that should be very important to you as well. And so, anyway, I hope that maybe you heard something there that made some light bulbs go off. Anyway, hope everybody's doing well. Stay safe. I know this has been a bit of a longer episode this week, but I was just so inspired I had to do it. So with that, I hope that you have a wonderful week, and I will talk to you next time. Peace. Thanks for joining me this week. If you enjoyed this episode, you'll enjoy my backlist episodes at michaelaran.com/podcast. For your free starter library of my favorite novels, join my fan club by visiting michaelaran.com/fanclub. If you're a writer and want to connect with me further, check out my YouTube channel, Author Level Up, for helpful writing advice at authorlevelup.com. Thanks for listening, and I'll be back next week.